Hello, all. Glad to have you here. We are having an interview with our friend here, Investment Joy, aka Brandon, uh, and we're going to be talking about building wealth and interesting ways to do that. Right, talking about his
Cool.
YouTube channel, talking about um, like how his path to success. So I'm actually really interested in all of that. Um,
Cool. Very good.
and I think you will be too, right? So if you're watching this on YouTube, like my YouTube, like, comment, and subscribe. We'd love to have you there, and consider hitting the becoming a member and hitting that join button, right? Supporting us that way, another great way to support the channel, or coming around on Twitch and watching us when we do these things live. But one way or the other, we're so happy to have you here. So let's
Very good.
introduce our guest. Hello, hi, Brandon. How are you?
Hey, howdy.
Hey. Yeah. So, Brandon, let's start from the beginning, right? You started this YouTube channel, but you've had like an interesting life story beforehand, like
Sure.
from a rags to riches story. Could you walk us
Yeah,
through that?
sure. Okay, so my name is Brandon. I am born and raised in Central Ohio. I've lived pretty much my whole entire life, about 20 miles south of Columbus, Ohio. So if you take a look at the map of Ohio, Columbus is in the middle. I'm about 20 miles south of that, and I've lived in outside a little town called Circleville or inside Circleville pretty much my whole entire life. So grew up decently poor. My dad was a truck driver. My mom was an Avon sales lady. So that means she kind of sort of went door to door to all of her mom friends and sold cosmetic products. Pretty poor growing up. My dad was an owner operator truck driver, which there was absolutely no money in. When I was 6 years old, we got evicted from our first house. Then we moved to the farmhouse, which was a little two-bedroom tenement home in the middle of a cornfield. We lived there for probably 12 or 13 years till my dad got sick. And by sick, I mean he had a heart attack. He was unable to work for essentially the rest of his life. That was 04-ish. So that was right after I turned 18. My brother and I, we had to go get jobs like ASAP, so we didn't get evicted again. So I went and I worked at a warehouse. My twin brother went and he started picking up trash for the city. Long story short, we did get evicted the second time around. Kind of my dad's health issue played into that, but then there was also like a natural disaster that happened too in the midst of my dad's heart attack. So we weren't able to live there anymore. Worked in a warehouse for several years. Decided that 11 bucks an hour wasn't enough to raise a family. Even though my mom sold Avon, and she also cleaned houses. She cleaned medical offices and stuff. My brother and I helped her clean those growing up. Um, you know, Dad did a lot of the heavy lifting for work by driving the truck. I always thought, yeah, it'd be nice to be able to offer that kind of environment potentially if I ever got married. So I thought, I need to start on a career. So I looked around my town and I was like, who's rich are real estate agents. They all drive Cadillacs, they all drive suits, they must all be rich. So I made the decision to go get a credit card, put real estate school on a credit card, which at that time was $1,350 from Hondros Real Estate School in New Albany, Ohio, which today is where they're building the new gigantic Intel plant, pretty close to school. Anyway, so I got real estate. I was in real estate for a year maybe, and then I came to the realization that everybody that I ran into real estate as an agent was totally broke. They had nice cars. They drove they drove Cadillacs. They had nice suits. All the ones I ran into were flat broke. But as a real estate agent, one of the things I did was I started having these people come into the office. I remember this guy, I won't mention his name, but he was a truck driver, just like my dad. And he came in and said, I want to buy a house and I want a 3-bed, 2-bath, and I want it in this part of town. And he gave me this laundry list of stuff that he wanted. And I said, okay, that's fine. Go get a mortgage. He said, I don't need a mortgage. What do you mean you're a truck? You need a mortgage. He took it, I guess, almost as a challenge from me. And he's like, boy, listen to me. And took this checkbook. I threw it at me. And I opened up the checkbook. He's like, take a look at that, son. I opened up this checkbook and there's $352,000 sitting in this bank account. And I'm like, what the freak? You're a truck driver. He said, yeah, I'm a truck driver that invests. And so I started talking to this guy. I was like, you're a truck driver. How did you do this? And he started talking to me about his investments. He's like, yeah, I drove a truck, but I made investments. I did this. This will be like my fourth house that I'm trying to buy right now. And he had this story, and I was like, this is insane. Uh, this guy's a truck driver. And then I had another guy that was a janitor at a nationwide hospital, and he was looking for some acreage down in the hills, and it's not cheap down there. It's definitely not cheap today. But he wanted a house down in the hills with a bunch of acreage, and he said, "I want to buy a house." And I said, "Okay, cool. You need to go to bank. You need to get pre-qualified." And he did the same freaking checkbook thing this other guy did. He said, "I don't need a bank." He said, "Here's my checkbook. Just take a picture of it and send it to the person that owns the property. They'll know I'm good for cash." He had $500,000 in his checkbook. I said, "What the heck are you doing? Are you selling something on the side to make some money as a janitor?" And he's like, "No, I've been buying houses around the hospital. And when I get off work for my janitor job, we go and I fix them up and I do some things. And my last two sales, I paid cash for like, I can't remember what number he quoted. It's like $50,000. He paid for two houses. He sold them for $500,000." And I was just like, what? I mean, this transpired. This is a short term story, but this transpired over like a year and a half, 2 years, and this was during the mortgage crisis happening.
Mm.
And these guys were just making obscene amounts of money. Yet two offices down, there was a real estate agent, and on their wall they had this picture of them on top of one of these big giant Las Vegas casinos, and they were going on. And it was just this grand scene, and this is I'm trying to think of who was president then. But whoever was president when I was in their office, they were like, "Screw the president. What's wrong?" He's like, "They didn't increase Social Security this month or this year." I was like, "What are you talking about?" They're like, "If they don't give us extra money on our Social Security, me and my wife are going to lose our house and we're going to starve to death." I was like, "You guys drive a Cadillac. Here's pictures on your wall of you on top of a casino in Las Vegas. Like, what's going on here?" And I started having all these conversations with broke real estate agents, people that looked rich and had nothing, and then these guys that were like truck drivers and janitors and other people, and they have all this money. And I was like, someone's, certain group A is doing the wrong thing, group B is doing the right thing. How do I get into group B? So then I just started on this journey, heavy duty in 2000, probably 8-ish. Like, how do I get money for properties? And I grew up poor. I didn't have anything. I wasn't making tons of sales in real estate either. It took me from about '08 till 2013. And then I came up to I finally broke down. I was like, you know what? I know a lot about real estate. I've been in it since '06. I know enough about real estate. I should just start asking people for money so I can go and buy more houses. I can't get a bank loan because the mortgage crisis had happened. They want W-2 income from a legitimate job source as far as like non-self-employed. Um, so I asked just a couple people that I had run into online in different places, "Do you have any money you put in real estate?" They said, "Sure, just give us a number." So I had sold off a little website company that I had built in 2010, 2011. I sold it for like 50 grand. So I had a little bit of seed capital. I said, "Tell you what, I'll put $25,000 on the first house." I was planning on going out and buying one house. And then these investors started giving me all the money that I requested. And from 2013, we bought two houses. 2014, I think about four. 2015, I think I bought 14. The year after that, I bought like 20 something. And so I started off with my first house, July 2013. And then I topped out here real recently at 138 rental doors, meaning houses plus apartments. Every housing unit is a door. So I had about 140 of those. I have a storage locker facility, which has like 40, almost 40 units on it. I bought two car washes last year, own a laundromat, and then I do the YouTube, TikTok, social media deal. So that I have all these different crazy little businesses, and they all generally revolve around money, business, finance, and stuff. I do own a local pseudo newspaper called the Scioto Post. We bought out a little regional newspaper here outside Columbus, Ohio, back in 2017, and I'm a part owner in it. And we do local news stories and things like that. Do some live streaming and things like that. So it's kind of interesting and neat. So
That is a journey that you've gone through, and
crazy times.
yeah, it's you like overcome quite a bit. Like you, there's so many in our country, right? they are born with any bracket, a wealth bracket, and that's where they'll die if they're lucky, because they can go lower, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But you went higher, so good work for everything that you've done. Yeah. So okay, so you started this YouTube channel, and what do you generally put out there on your on that channel?
It's like what my trending content does that does really well is mostly revolving around my laundromat. Let me see if I can click this button. Uh, so I do this. It's like a big deal that I do on social media. I count money. We deal with a lot of cash in my laundromats and my car washes. So then I'll do collection videos where I show how much money we made for the day. And in short form content, we just show how, this is what I made today. This is the process of me going around getting money. Then in my long format YouTube content, we break down profit and loss sheets, things like that. TikTok's very similar to my YouTube shorts. On my YouTube long format YouTube content, then I'm trying to do more financial literacy, trying to do kind of the content that I wish that I had when I was a kid. Because I've talked about on quite a few podcasts. The richest guy I knew growing up when we were a kid, this is pre-real estate, was a guy that worked at a TV plant. And I think that his household, they made like $50,000 a year. So growing up was like, that's so and so. That's like the highest level I can achieve in life as a guy working at a TV plant. Then my family was down here. Federal poverty line in '96. If memory serves right, was $18,000 to $20,000 a year household income for a family of four. I have my parents' tax returns from 1996, and my parents made $14,000 that year. That was our AGI. So we were $4,000 to $6,000, depending on how you cut it, under the federal poverty line for a family of four. So we did not grow up knowing any of this stuff. And now I'm at this point on YouTube, TikTok, social media. I'm like, oh my gosh. And I had these videos that just, we're probably at 1 billion views in between TikTok and YouTube right now. And it's like, okay, so how do I take these videos that are really clickbaity and they have money and everybody wants to look at, this. And we did a video and I go and I hand, little stacks of money around and stuff like that around town. We just shot that video last week. Everybody likes looking at the money and they like looking at the money. They like looking at the YouTube play button. They like looking at the wealth and stuff, and that gets the clicks. But the problem is, like for me, like it's what's next? How do I get these people to get out of endemic poverty? How do I educate people and avoid the pitfalls that I do now? Like right as I came on this stream, like someone asked me a question about credit cards. They're like, "So what kind of points and all these different credit card things do you do?" And I'm like, credit cards were one of the worst traps my parents ever had. Like when my dad's truck broke down and he needed a new motor for it, guess what my parents did? They put it on a credit card. They paid 19.95% interest till they went bankrupt. And whatever, my parents declared bankruptcy at some point just to discharge the my dad's truck debt. And it was and my parents probably paid $100,000. I'm guessing between 1990 and 2000, whatever, 2010, just on interest payments. So for me now as an adult, I'm like, oh, I avoid credit cards like the black plague. And being in the social media, YouTube, blogosphere, whatever you want to call it, I have all these people who are like, oh, you don't churn credit cards, you don't go and do this point stuff. And I'm like, I try to stay away from it because every time I see it, I remember my mom and dad saying, how are we going to pay the minimum payment this month? Where are we going to come up with that money? What are we going to do? And I look back at those times, I'm like, oh, the way, if I was in charge today, I just would have never got the credit card to begin with. And I would have, unfortunately, even though my dad wanted to drive a truck and he thought that that was the way to make money, he could have got a job somewhere else. After he quit trucking, he started working at Walmart as a stocker. And that was actually a bump up in my family's living conditions. My dad started working at Walmart like probably 2000, 2001 ish. And it's pretty nice for our family. We started doing better than him driving a semi truck. So I'm hopefully slowly getting towards that way, but I've got to figure out how do I not kill my YouTube channel because every time I go on YouTube and I talk about using an FHA loan, how to apply for government funding, government financing to buy a property for, especially as a rental, my my interest group on YouTube and TikTok goes from millions to teeny tiny sliver. And then I'm trying to figure out what's that look like as time goes on. How do I take those millions of people watching my content and stick all of them into, hey, guess what? The government has a program called USDA, and they are giving money away to people with a 620 plus credit score to buy a house with no money down. And here's how you do a deal like that. And here's how you buy a house with no money down. Because my parents, if I would have known back in 1991 that USDA had 0% loans back then, like they do today, my parents could have owned a house rather than renting their whole entire lives, almost their entire lives. They rented property from 73 all the way till 05, 06. They finally bought a house with a subprime mortgage. So that was neat. But you know, they didn't know. They just had no clue of any of this stuff. And now I'm like, okay, how do I implement these things? How do I teach people? How do I go and implement these things inside my content? Because I've definitely got the audience for it, but it's kind of a scripting issue. How do I make it interesting enough and engaging? That's where I'm slowly headed, but it's a slow process.
So, you said a lot of interesting things, and I think the most interesting thing you talked about was on that educational process. I can assure you, with my background, my parents didn't get that sort of education. Now, my parents actually did pretty well for themselves. I mean, they're working class, like the entire time, but um, our standard of living has always been relatively high. I remember kids who were also working class coming to my home and assuming we were middle class. And that was only because my parents like knew how to save, right? Knew not to get into that credit card trap that you were talking about, right? They had cards, but they were very frugal and strategic of how they use that, right? They uh, had at first they were renting, and they saved up. My dad bought a house that had that was pretty relatively broke down, took a lot of work, and was low on the market because someone had died there. Like the last owner had like just died, and they didn't discover it for like months. It was, yeah, one of those situations, right? So um, they started from the bottom, right? And they worked their way up, and they never escaped the working class life, right? They never got to that next level that you're talking about, right?
Mhm.
But they worked the system as best they could, and they spent their money strategically, and it paid off for me. Allowed me to go to college and all that stuff, right? But still, and I can see it myself, right? When I talk to them about like doing things that aren't, um, by the book, right?
Mhm.
Like not like getting a 9 to 5, streaming, right, is not a thing.
Yeah.
Then you're going to understand uh, if you are very conventionally minded. Um, but beyond that, right, there's investing, and they don't know really much about that.
Mhm.
You just know, hey, put it in a bank, put it in a savings account, and you're good to go. Um, uh, and there's so much more that you could use opportunities
Yeah.
to build wealth here. And if we suffer a shock, right, if families like mine suffer a serious shock, they
Mhm.
don't have a whole bunch of savings, uh,
Yeah.
ready, right? Like, we have some assets that we can maybe sell off if we really
Yeah.
needed to, but we don't have all of that. So there's there's this whole world, right? Of investing, of money management, and the people working class, like they're in an aquarium, right? And you don't realize there's an ocean out there,
Mhm.
and so I like the idea of you helping people assist it, like get to that ocean, right? Like get out of your small little pond and explore. So I think that's valuable, but I can understand why some people think, oh, that's boring, right?
Yeah.
But yeah.
It is what it is, and it's like I can either fight the system or I can like, how does the system work? How can I manipulate it? because that's essentially what I do in my real estate business. I go out, like my prime product is going out and finding wealthy kids that inherited a lot of assets, and they're running the business into the ground because they don't understand that there's a system. Certain things work in life and certain things don't work in life. And they're learning the hard way, and they're destroying all of the money that their parent or grandparent generated. So I go in and offer them a buyout. And through learning that system, it's like, okay, if you learn the system, things can work. And it's just like YouTube has a system, Twitch has a system, Instagram has a system, Facebook. They all have these algorithms and methodologies. And I run into lots of people that produce content that's amazing. I just so much better than I do. But it's like they're producing content in the way that they want to, which is fine. If you be true to yourself as much as you can. But then I've had these conversations. I'm like, your content's great, but your audio sucks. You need to go out and do what I did. Go to Walmart, buy an $89 microphone. It'll work really well. Go get some soundproofing and build yourself a little cage and then just narrate over your video. And they tell me to go screw myself. They're like, who are you to judge me? I'm like, just some guy with over 4 million subscribers on social media. I mean, not that that's something that's some ultra high and lofty goal, but I've done it on YouTube, I've done it on Twitch, and there are newspaper has 500,000 on Facebook, 3 different platforms, and I've got 33,000 on Instagram. Like, I'm not telling you something that I'm not trying to tell you that I don't do myself. Learn the system, learn what they want, give the platform what they want, and then figure out how you can implement yourself into it. And it's like you have this story about your family with their money situation. That's my story with my grandparents. My grandparents, not that they were middle class, working class, and my grandpa put money in certificates of deposit. And I don't know if you have any clue what certificates of deposits are.
Hmm?
If you have a bank account, it's right here. Certificates of deposits are like right up here.
Yeah, it's a little bit
And
higher. Yeah.
for a very short time during the late 70s, early to mid 1980s, certificates of deposits were wonderful investments. And then they weren't. And my grandpa died in 92 or 93, I think. And those were his thing, and those were her thing. And they just kept buying certificates of deposit. Back in the early 80s, there were 12%. You could make 12% on a CD.
Wow.
And then they were 8%, and then they were 6%, and then they were 5%. And when my grandma died, my mom had to cash in one of those to pay for her funeral expenses. And if memory serves me right, she was getting 0.75% interest on it. And I was like, what on earth is this? She had $50,000 in a certificate of deposit to pay for her funeral arrangements. And she was losing a percent a year to inflation. And she had been for who knows how long. Same exact CD, just flipping it over and over and over again.
Oh.
And it's just, they didn't have any interest in learning anything beyond it. Um, someone had tried to convince my grandma and to get my mom's help on buying 240 acres outside Columbus, Ohio, back in 1981. And my mom keeps saying, "Oh, we keep kicking ourselves. We wish we would have bought the land." I said, "Why didn't you buy the land?" And they said, "We just didn't think it was very good compared to CDs." And why did you think it was good, not good compared to CDs? And she said, "Well, you have to rent it to a farmer and you have to sign a contract, and we like banks more." And that piece of ground that my grandma, with my mom's help, did not buy in 1981 is still sitting up outside Commercial Point, Ohio, right now, and it's worth, I'm guessing, between 2.5 and 3.5 million dollars. And they could have bought it for nothing. Um, Instead, they bought certificates of deposits because that's what they thought that it was in. Now, if you would have ever gone around and looked at the state of Ohio and looked at any sort of farmland, any sort of land that was productive in the state, and you would go back even 100 years and look at the price of farmland, it just keeps going up. And it's been consistent, much more consistent than certificate of deposit. But they didn't look at any of that stuff. They got advice from my grandpa, who said buy CDs, and they did. And that's something they could have done to get money, but they didn't. And it should, on one end, you can sit and you can bemoan about it, you can throw a fit, you can get angry about it, or you could say, okay, what is something that I can learn here? And I think that for me in social media, it's been one of the more valuable things that I've done. It's like I've been looking at these things that are going on in my family's lives or the lives of people that I engage on social media. I'm like, oh, that sucks. What can we learn here? And as I feel like as I learn through these different situations, it's like, okay, there's a right and a wrong. Because now I'm at a point I deal with the ultra wealthy. Like I have been in the driver's seat of those kinds of picture arrangements on the top, not this exact scenario, on the top of a casino overlooking, Las Vegas, but I've been in the side of a mountain overlooking Las Vegas at a $2.5 million condo owned by a very famous guy on YouTube overlooking the valley. And I'm not up to my eyeballs in debt as far as consumer debt goes. I am up to my eyeballs in real estate mortgages, but that's kind of another story. They're at least somewhat productive. But I look at these situations that led me there, and I talk to all these very ultra wealthy people, and so many of them have the exact same story that I do. My one of my best buddies, Sean, that I talk about on my channel. He's like me. Neither one of us have gone to college. My claim to fame is evicted twice, and his claim to fame is lived in every trailer park east of the Mississippi. And he came from extreme poverty. Believe single parent household, very transient lifestyle growing up until he was in his mid 20s, and started a convenience store. It failed miserably, and then through the convenience store got into flipping cars. I think he flipped a car title into a house, and then he took the house. And since then, I think he's over 100 rentals now, and his goal this year was to buy 100 more. And I run into these people, and they have these very similar stories where they learned really quick. They got to the point they were tired, and they started finding people that were successful, went in under, took them on as mentors, and they became mentees, and started finding out those stories, those situations, those kind of like odd commonalities that you find with other investors, and you're like, okay, so what are you doing right now to make money? Oh, I'm buying tax liens. Okay, how does that work? This is how it works. Oh, I'm buying single family detached. I'm buying multifamily. I'm buying trailer park. I'm renting dirt. I'm buying dirt. I'm doing quarrying in gravel quarries in Southern Ohio. Start talking to these people about how they're doing money, and it's kind of like this odd co-op game. I used to play, well, I still play games, but I used to be really big into like real-time strategy simulation games, and I always hated multiplayer because I had to play against human beings. But it's always fun with people I knew playing co-op campaigns against artificial, the AI, the computer. It was always fun playing against a computer rather than a person. And it's just like when I deal with these business owners, it's like that's kind of all co-op. They're all trying to figure out how to grow their their assets and their money situation, grow their companies, grow their businesses, and they're doing it through a lot of very common means, as opposed to everybody's doing something just 90 different. They're at some point you start to realize that there's just kind of this system in place that you've got to learn and use it for your advantage. And it's, you know, don't put all your money in a bank. Savers tend to be losers. Buy assets that go up in value as opposed to depreciating one. Don't don't get into consumer debt. Oh my gosh, consumer debt's a huge thing. Don't live extravagantly. Don't live beyond your means. I know one guy out of all the investors I know that's one of those YouTube guys. It's like Porsches and Ferraris and everybody else. Richest guy I know in central southern Ohio drives a Hyundai Santa Fe. It's worth like 50-60 million dollars. He drives a Santa Fe, and it's like he owns a little 3-bed, 1-bath ranch. Doesn't have 2 bathrooms in his house. He has 1 bathroom, and he doesn't live extravagantly. I'm sure he could, but it's just one of those things. You start running into these scenarios and situations. You find people that grew up like just like you, or very similar ways. I mean, I'm not saying my upbringing was bad. I didn't go to college. Yeah, I had been working since I was 18. Yeah, that sucks. Whatever. But I run into people that their parents were drug addicts, and they were. I was evicted twice. My friend Joe was evicted is either 18 times by the time he was 12, or he was evicted 12 times by the time he was 18. I can't remember which one of those two, but he just had this awful life, and he owns 123 rental properties now in a hotel. He owns a freaking hotel, and I think he's probably on the beach in Key West, Florida right now. He does not own a nice house, but every January and February, while there's 2 inches of ice in Central Ohio, it does go to a beach. And you talk to these people, and they'll have very similar stories. Like, what did you do? Well, I decided that I wasn't going to put money in the bank. I wanted to buy a rental property. I wanted to buy something that went up in value, produced income, as opposed to saving it. So
Yeah. Um, and that's the difference. I like that idea of like savers tend to be losers. Um, but all this is easier said than done. But one thing, what could you define consumer debt for people?
Consumer debt, for to a large extent, is debt that you take on that does not produce anything for you other than, let's say, dopamine. Consumer debt would be like taking a credit card and going out and buying a new PC. Do you need a PC? Not really. I ran into a lot of people that buy these really nice, very much nicer computers than I'm on right now. They buy streaming rigs so they can play games. And they put on a credit card. That's consumer debt. You go out and buy a new couch. You go out and buy new chairs or whatever. I guess furniture is expensive. I wouldn't know because I haven't paid for a piece of furniture probably my whole entire life, because I just go out and ask aunts and uncles, and I go get it for free at yard sales. I don't think I've ever bought anything from a thrift store as far as furniture goes, but I usually get free stuff from yard sales. Like, but I know that there are people out there. I ran into someone a couple weeks ago. They bought a couch that was like $3,500, and they put on a credit card. I thought it was the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. So for me, consumer debt is you use debt and you buy something that doesn't produce anything. Now, for me, for my investments, I use debt to go out and buy car washes. I use debt to go out and buy real estate, like houses, apartment complexes. I use debt to go out and buy laundromat, retool my laundromat equipment. I use debt sometimes to go out and rehab a house to fix things up. To me, that's not consumer debt. That's using debt. The gurus call it leverage, leveraging debt. You use debt to acquire something that produces a tangible value. Now, there's kind of a gray area, and this is where, as much as I like Dave Ramsey's advice, him and I kind of disagree on this one. I don't absolutely hate the idea of getting an auto loan if you have a 9 to 5 job and you need transportation to go from point A to point B for work. I'm not totally unequivocally opposed to getting an auto loan. Just don't go out and buy a $50,000 Mercedes or something like that. Go buy yourself a Toyota Corolla. Be happy with the Toyota Corolla. You don't have to acquire tons of debt to do that. So, yeah, is it consumer debt? But yeah, it's kind of making you money because you're able to go out and secure maybe a better job. Here in Southern Ohio, if you go and you work at a local place, you might make $13 an hour. If you're willing to drive 35, 45 minutes up to the Amazon warehouse in Groveport, Ohio, you make $20 an hour. But you need to drive a distance. And I drove that distance when I was working at the warehouse. And there was a very big difference in the amount of money that I would have made locally, right in my area, or if I could have driven a little farther, got out a little bit better of a reach, my income prospect increased. So having a reliable piece of transportation, to me at this point, I think that's not a terrible decision. Now, when I was working at the warehouse and growing up, all we had were trash cars that never worked, and just that was awful. That was like, yeah, that's one of my off points. I try to be very careful about the vehicles I buy. So I typically buy newer vehicles with salvage titles built by rebuild companies that I trust. So I end up getting a really good deal on a car. Anymore, I pay cash for them, but you could get a loan if you wanted to. And I just search by reliability ratings and all that stuff so that I don't end up on the side of a road. Because growing up, the amount of times my family was left on the side of the road was quite a few. And we didn't have AAA or anything like that. Someone had to bring their pickup truck, and my family got home on a rope tied to probably the rear bumper of a Chevy pickup truck from the 70s, probably 3 or 4 times.
Oh man.
Um, that's just what it was growing up in the country, Southern Ohio, without access to a decent vehicle.
So I wanted to talk about some of the things that some of the videos that I've seen on your
Sure.
channel. So you talked about like other investments, right? And
Mhm.
I looked at a video called Hillbilly Investments. Um,
Okay.
and I thought that was interesting, and at least how you presented things, right? The first thing
Okay.
you presented, you were talking about Pokemon cards.
Yeah.
And you gave a story about like your little girl who got a Pokemon card, and you recognize that this one my like rise in value is one of those rare like shiny Pokemon
Yeah.
cards, right? And she's like, "Well, I want to go play with this," and you're like, "No, we gotta put
Yeah.
this, we gotta protect this, put this in a protective cover, right, and
Yeah.
never touch it again."
Yeah.
Which is a tough thing for a kid to hear.
Yeah,
But,
yeah, it's yeah. My daughter though is much more accustomed to finding rare cards, but now my kids are kind of getting the itch for those kinds of investments. And are they investments? I don't know. Are they um, games? Are they toys? I don't know. But my daughter, every time she opens up a Pokemon booster pack, she goes through and the first thing she does is she gets on her phone to see the value of each individual card, so she knows she has, X amount of plastic cases. So then she knows the value of each car, so she makes sure that they're in the right case. So I mean, it's just for me, it's kind of what started me on this pathway was growing up without having money. My brother and I, we really, when we were kids, we wanted to get into playing paintball, and it was so expensive, just impractical growing up the way that we did. So the only way that we knew to make any money to play the sport was to work on equipment. And after a while, we got really good at working on equipment, and then that was just funding us to play. And we didn't make any money off of it, but we also were able to play. We were able to do things that were far beyond our level of income. We had no money, but we started learning that we were making money repairing equipment. So then we were able to buy better equipment, trade it back and forth. And I was doing that stuff growing up. And this is kind of one of those things where I look at as an adult. I'm like, okay, how do I compartmentalize this and bring it in an educational format and teach people? Because we were making money repairing equipment. We were making, if I would sit down and probably analyze it, I was probably making $25 to $35 an hour doing that. But then there were all these other things that I did, and I had no clue what Excel was. I had no clue what a spreadsheet was. I had no clue what accounting was when I was playing paintball. All I knew is I do this, I make money. I do this, I spend money, and
mm,
that was the whole entire calculation. But now, as an adult, I'm like, man, if I could have run a spreadsheet, I would have been able to get out of poverty pretty quick. I probably could have paid for my family to get out of the house that we lost and so forth. Just because I would have been able to identify. I think I've been able to identify that this segment was 9 times more profitable than this segment over here.
mm,
But when it came to my time allocation, what was fun? I took
mm,
the thing that was making no money and costing me money, and I was spending all the time up here and no time on the one that was making me money. And it's like I run into those kind of situations, and we bring it back around to my kids. I'm kind of thinking that they're understanding these things because they wanted to go out. They want to buy it. They've wanted to buy for the past couple of years a Switch, Nintendo Switch.
mm,
And I told them, like, you have to make the money. You want to buy games, yeah, there's Christmas, yeah, there's birthdays. I get a lot of hate mail because I'm cheapskate with my kids too. It's like, if you want to get these things,
mm,
you're going to
mm,
earn them. I'm not going to buy them for you. So they wanted to get some Switch games. I'm like, you're going to go out and work. Well, how are we going to work? And my wife had the idea, let's do a bake sale. It's like, I hate bake sales, but whatever. So they did a bake sale, and they went and they had this bake sale, and I think they were there for an hour and a half, 2 hours, and they made like $5. They had like $30 in flour and all this different stuff. And I said, kids, do you want to really make money? And they're like, sure, we want to make money. What kid doesn't want to make money? Like, every kid wants to make $1 million run their lemonade stand. I said, here's the thing, guys. This is what daddy does in his daytime. Daddy does sales, daddy does marketing, daddy runs a business. You're going to make money, but you're going to feel embarrassed and you're not going to enjoy this, but it'll be worth it. And my kids are like, oh, okay, whatever, daddy. I said, all right, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to show you how to do a sales pitch. And my 12-year-old and 10-year-old are super, super cute. I just absolutely love them to death. And they said, what's a sales pitch, daddy? And I said, you're going to go and you're going to tap on everybody's coat here. And I said, to my daughter Tempe. Tempe's my 10 years old. I said, you want to go poke on everybody and you say, my name's Tempe and I'm 10 years old. My sister and I have made fresh baked bread and we haven't sold too much. Would you like to buy some? I kid you not, my kids made $80 an hour at a bake sale.
yeah,
They
that's,
sold practically everything they had made,
yeah,
and of course, like 3 hours.
wow,
And they made like, I don't know, they made a couple $100 after paying my wife back for the the wheat and the flour and the all the stuff that they used for the bake sale. And I said, guys, here's the thing. If you would have stayed at the bake sale, you would have made $15. And that wouldn't even covered half of what you put into the stuff. But because you listened to daddy and you did something that was uncomfortable, but it worked, you've each come home with like, it's like 120, 140, 150. I don't know. I mean, like, it was a lot of money, especially as a 10-year-old, 12-year-old. And I said, there's a process, there's a system. You have to get some experience here, but some of it's going to come at a cost of comfortability. And how many kids are there that are out there that tried to do the lemonade stand, tried to do the bake sale, and they made like $5, and it ruined them. And it's because somebody told them that all you have to do is just work hard, honey. Just work hard, honey, and you'll make all the money in the world. It's like money's social media, business, finance. I know that's not true. Working hard is an aspect of being successful and making money, but it's not the be all end all. Uh, Elon Musk works really hard, but he also has other things going for him that combined with a great work ethic, great knowledge, access to capital, understands how to deploy the capital. All these different things come together and they merge, and you got, wow, we're going to go to Mars.
Well, hold on,
Cool.
hold on. Let's okay. I got to push back a little bit here. Okay, right?
All right.
When it comes to billionaires, right? Like I think there's a lot of use in like modeling yourself. When you were talking about like the mentors and the mentee
Yep.
situation that those individuals you were talking about gotten themselves into, right? They're looking for ways to make money,
Sure.
ways to invest to get out of their current situation. I think
Sure.
there's a lot of uh good looking at for someone in your local community, someone you have access to, right?
Okay.
Who is doing well and start copying them. But billionaires are like a different class altogether, right? And like you named a whole bunch of things, right? Like hard work,
Yeah.
knowledge, and all those stuff, right?
Yeah.
And then you snuck in the one thing,
Okay. All right.
access
Sure.
to capital. That part's very
Okay.
important.
Hey,
And when it
you
comes
want to
to
talk about it? You want to
okay,
talk
go
about it?
ahead. Yeah.
I'll give you the deal. No one can make more time. You
Yep.
and I both have 24 hours a day.
Mm-hmm.
So here's the problem. That goes for the guy that sits on his couch and has no job. That also goes for the wealthiest person in your area. Everybody only has 24 hours of time. So you've got to develop skill sets that are what the people that have all the money with no time need. And then you've got to come up with a plan to get that money from them. In the United States, all it requires is a $50 form with the SEC. It's called a SEC 506D form. It's for accredited investment to go and submit to your investor and say, I want money from you. And then they've got to sign a form. It's called a PMM, private placement memorandum. If you want to go this route, you don't have to go this route, but this is a full blown legal way to do this. And then they've got that law actually says when you approach people like that, they have to be millionaires. They have to be extremely wealthy. So you go and you approach that investor and you say, this is a business plan that I have access to, or I want to do with you. I need your money. And as long as you can present, this has been the case for me. Anytime that I can present somebody with a way to make more money than generally speaking what the stock market's averaged, which like up until the past 2 years, it's been about 8 to 10%, which is not hard to do. As from my standpoint, if you can offer somebody a return that exceeds or at least matches the stock market, there's a pretty good chance that you're going to get money. If you can offer somebody a return that's in the 12 to 14% range, most of the time you can get dump truck loads of money. But you have to find some sort of business, something to get into to get a good yield. And you can get a good yield through buying a business, buying real estate. There's a lot of different plays there because a lot of that stuff has very good tax incentives. So you can go and approach somebody with lots of capital and say, I want to start this laundromat. Laundromats currently have 120% bonus depreciation. You can section 179 it, and you can write off all of your equipment investment at 120% first year. So would you, Mr. Millionaire, multimillionaire in the community, would you like this possible tax write-off this year? And Mr. Millionaire's looking at a big giant tax bill at the end of the year or whatever. He said, oh, wow, Bill down the street has a laundromat that we can make some money on. I don't have time to do this, but boy, this looks like a cool investment. Maybe I should give this guy some money. He seems to have some hustle. And then you go out and you find these businesses to go, and then you do what I've done for years. And I do less of it every year. You go out and you cut the investor a deal. You go out and you work your butt off. You take this much of a margin off the top. You work good. You make sure that they make a bunch of money, and then all of a sudden, it's amazing when you make money for somebody that's an investor that has a lot of capital. They let all their friends know about their investments because it's like a bragging competition. Oh, I bought a laundromat with this guy down the street. Homeless Bill bought this laundromat with me, and we were making a killing. Homeless Bill, the guy there that never done anything, never went to college. Brandon, this hillbilly from Central Ohio that's been evicted twice, never gone to college, who has no formal education beyond a 3-week real estate school in New Albany. This guy is the one that you gave money to, and he's giving you a really good return with tax write-offs. You're really doing it. And it's like you do that once, and you start getting calls. And even before I was big on YouTube, before I was on Twitch, before any of the social media stuff, I was turning people down probably every month, every other month. They wanted to give me money because they're like, I've heard that you did a duplex investment with a guy in Austin, Texas last year, and you bought a house for $27,000. Okay, whatever. Yeah, we did. How much more of those deals do you have? Can I get in on them? And then you just kind of work your way up to where you go from being the guy that's working, hustling, getting those investments, finding the deals, to where eventually over time you become the guy with the money in no time. And then you go out and you find the version of you 10 years ago, 5 years ago, how many years ago, and then you just kind of find somebody, work the way up. I'm kind of in the middle now. Got some capital I'm deploying and making investments in other people, but then I'm also taking other money that I have and redeploying in my own business and trying to scale up.
So this is something.
And that's one way
Well,
to do it.
yeah. I mean, it's one way to do it. It's I'm not sure how that's Elon Musk's way of doing it, right? Elon Musk, like he had like his family like owned like a mine in South Africa, right? Um, like I mean,
I
I just
mean,
saying that like his story isn't our story. That's my only pushback, right?
I
Like,
mean, it's the problem is I'm currently dealing with people that they're being mentored by billionaires, and from these guys that I trust, they kind of come from some pretty similar backgrounds too to me. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. I could be totally off base here, but I know that when I was in Las Vegas and I was talking to a guy on the side of the mountain when I was on the Grand Stefan show, like right before I met with Grand Stefan, we're talking about, do you want to come to our Christmas party? There's gonna be some really neat people here. And he started naming the celebrity list that was going to be there. I'm like, these people are way out of my league. He said, no, you'll fit in right fine, Brandon. You got a YouTube channel. Okay, gosh, darn it. But the big thing is, from my perspective, that ladder of I'm in this place, I'm trying to find a mentor in this place. That mentor, most of the time, at least what I found, they have a mentor in this place. And then that mentor has a mentor in this place. And when I started off, I was getting mentors that had one house. Now my mentors have 1,000 houses. My mentors have told me that have 1,000 houses. They're like, yeah, my mentor's got 10,000. Who's his mentor? Well, he's part of a PE fund, and they deal with just hedge funds, and they sell paper on Wall Street. It's like, oh wow, that's a really crazy world to live in. And I know it's overwhelming, or it can be overwhelming, or something that people don't want to think about, but that world is out there. But you've got to be, at least from my opinion, at least a little bit willing, open to consider it. Because there's just so many ways that you can go out and earn money. Like the one thing that's really fun right now is going out and doing a house hack with an FHA loan. The government's still loaning out money like crazy, and all you've got to do is put 3.5% down. So you can go out and buy a large house, 3.5% down. The average house in the United States, $405,000. So you've got to come up with around $15,000 down, and you can buy a house. You can, as long as the government doesn't get on your case, you can turn it into apartments, and then you can rent out the apartments, or you can do Airbnb on them. And generally speaking, that's an easy way to get in the game for 15 grand. Or if you live in an area that has USDA election zones, you can do it with zero down, because you need to come up with 2%, but you just ask the seller to pay that 2%, which is legal under the USDA program. So,
oh boy. Okay. There's an argument here with that I could have with you.
sure.
I want to. Before we go there, I want to push that aside for a second. We can come back to like the landlord and the loans and the private equity investment funds, right? We can come back to that. Before that, there are things on your channel that I think are valuable for individuals here,
Okay,
right?
sure.
I've got an extremely lefty audience, and I can see them in chat, and they're like chomping at the bit. But
I would love for every single one of them to become a multimillionaire and start a company and change the world in the way that they desire to.
oh, okay. I'm just gonna.
I'm sorry, is that the wrong thing? Sorry.
No. I look. We'll move past that, right? Let's focus on the things that we're going to have an agreement on right now, right? Okay. Uh, so, what I really liked, so our friend Doobie, our mutual friend Doobie, put us in contact with each other, right? But I had heard about you much farther in the past, right?
Okay.
Because I was looking for ways to make money, right? And Doobie told me about like your videos on vending machines.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, which I thought was like really interesting. I didn't. I mean, I realized vending machines made money, but like it seemed like a thing that like a company would do, right?
Yeah.
Not like an individual, like an average Joe would like get into
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And it's a really good idea. The only reason I haven't done it myself is because I would actually like to leave my city as soon as possible.
Sure.
But beyond that, whenever I find a place I want to settle in, like this is something I actually want to jump into, right?
Sure.
And what I liked about, and we're going to go through a bunch of the things that you have on your YouTube channel, is that the things that you are pushing are just things that like a regular person can do once they like gather enough capital, right? Start
Sure.
for anything really. But like they're just things that require some elbow grease,
Sure.
that like the things that you're listing aren't like get rich quick schemes, right?
Yeah.
There are an investment in your time, right? And a small investment in your money to get started. But like if you work that system, whatever that system happens to be, like there is money to be made there.
Yes.
And so like, and I think the vending machines really like encapsulates that, right?
Yes.
Vending machines, and I'll let you go into this, but like vending machines being a relatively cheap investment, but the return, if you do it properly, right, can be huge. So can you elaborate on the vending machines?
Sure. I mean, the big thing is with vending machines is like a lot of people don't understand that you can just go on Facebook Marketplace and buy a vending machine for a couple $100. You want to do it the even cheap way is honor boxing, which I know some guys that are just actually crushing it with $5 honor boxes. Those are the ones you take to doctor offices and it says like, please support, some people do it as a nonprofit or a lot of them people just say, help support me in this business or things like that. So then you just fill them up with candy, and it's an honor system deal where you put in 50 cents or $1 or whatever, and you put it in the cardboard box. And I know there's a guy I ran into from New York City. He's doing 250 to 350,000 a year just doing those little cardboard boxes. But it's just those aren't any different than a vending machine. Go on Facebook Marketplace, you go buy a vending machine. Some of them are broken, some of them aren't. I pay about $1,000 for a high quality, decent working vending machine. $300 to $500 is what I spend on a not working great vending machine. You got to try to figure out how to test them and make sure that the compressor doesn't leak. Because if the compressor leaks, then that's a whole ball of wax with dealing with finding somebody that has an EPA permit to go and remediate the compressor. But that's all achievable. It's just the more complicated anything gets, like the more money there is in it. My brother is in the process of getting his EPA certification. It's like $135, and then he can fix compressors for me. But you go out and you find a vending machine, and then you go and you find a business or location that has a need for a vending machine. I did a video here last week with the Financial Wolf, and he's like, let's go and talk to people and hand out flyers for your laundromat, because I let him run the laundromat for a day and then collect the money at the end of the day to see if he could improve my business more than I could. So we went to this location, and he's like, oh, wow, there could be vending machines here. Because I've already talked to them and we're wanting to put vending machines here. So it's just one of those things. People don't realize that you can approach people that have physical locations. You can put a vending machine in front of. I met a guy in, gosh darn it, I want to say Reno, Nevada. And he watches me on YouTube and he says, Brandon, I've got the greatest thing ever. And I said, well, tell me about it. He said, I approached the city and asked about vending machines for products that are necessities. Like He asked the city, and he said, if I run a vending machine where people can buy underwear and socks and soap and I think even clean needles in this specific program, and I sell them for a quarter a piece or 10 cents or 5 cents a piece, it was a very small amount. He negotiated with the city. He said, I would like to have vending machine locations at your government buildings. And they said, not only will we give you those vending locations at the government buildings, we will build all the infrastructure, the electric outlets, everything that you need if you do this program. So he went out and he bought like 3 vending machines for this initiative by the city. Um, about 3 or 4 vending machines, set them up for like $1,500, and then he got access to every single government facility in the region. And then he's put, gosh, I think it's remember. I've got the DM session here on Discord, but I think he was at like 24 vending machines last time he messaged me, and it just started for just with very little money out of his pocket. But he runs other businesses, and he's like, I want to see how much money can I make off of vending machines using Brandon's just try and ask people for things strategy. And then he just built this. He's built this really crazy vending business with very little money out of pocket. And the thing that I've discovered is a lot of people just don't go out and ask people for stuff. Um, Maybe it's my poor kid mentality, but you know, if someone has something that I want, at least I'll try and ask them for it. That's how I got these car washes. Went to somebody and asked him. I said, "You want to sell your car wash?" And he said, "Yeah." How much you want to give me? I said, "How about nothing?" And he said, "Why would I give you my car wash?" I said, "How about I just make you monthly payments?" And he said, "That's really interesting. Never heard of anybody want to offer monthly payments to take over their profitable business." So we've done some of those deals. But it's just like there's all these different ways that you can find business to get into. And honor boxes are like for $5. You can also get into vending machines. My brother has a very thriving appliance repair business.
Hmm?
And all he did was go and find on trash day appliances that people were going to send to recycling. And he would just drive down the road in a beat up pickup truck, and he would go and get washers and dryers. Those are his 2 big things, stoves and refrigerators, and then he would clean them up and figure out what they needed to fix. And he runs a very large used appliance business here in Central Ohio because he was turning somebody else's trash into treasure. And essentially, what he did was he went out and got like I think the first group of stoves that he got, he went and he got like a dozen stoves, and he scrapped all the parts off of them. He made 6 that worked, and he sold the 6 working stoves for $150 a piece. So now he's got $900 with no money out of his pocket, just time. And then he takes that $900 and then he buys parts and goes gets another dozen, 2 dozen from the scrapyard or the curb, gets a couple Facebook ads, asks all the friends and people in the community, hey, do you guys want to help prevent waste from piling up at the transfer station with these appliances? Help me give them a new lease on life. Let me fix them for people. And now he sells retrofit kits because everybody hates how Samsung and LG refrigerators break after 5 years. He figured out why are these things functionally obsolescent? Why
Mm.
do the refrigerators break all the time? So he came up with a part that remediates the ice overflow issue on these refrigerators, and now he's selling a part to fix those refrigerators long term, and he sells the kits. So he took that business from picking essentially trash on the side of the road that no one had to use for fixing it, and he's turned it into a very thriving appliance repair company. And now his crew's the one that goes out and repairs my vending machine at this rate, my vending machines at this rate.
Yeah. So I love this idea of you know, applying hard work to these very uh, I'm not sure if niche is the word I'm looking for, but these very specific business ideas, and like seeing like how far you can go, right? So just back to the vending machines for a moment,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like what's involved, right? Like you get a vending machine, right?
Mm-hmm.
You
So,
buy some supplies like wholesale, right?
yep.
Um,
Well,
y-
no,
or
I,
not
I go to
wholesale.
Sam's Club.
Oh, you go
I
to
have a
Sam's
Sam's
Club.
Club. I go to
Okay.
Sam's Club. I have a $45 a year membership.
Or go to Sam's Clubs. Okay, sure. Why not? And you stock them. You sell them like you just have to like you have to put it in a place where there's a lot of foot traffic, obviously, right?
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, you've got to figure out where has traffic and where doesn't.
mm,
And some places might work, some places might not. I have a really popular face or YouTube short, and it's got millions and millions of views on it, and no one understands. Like I did the short, and no one gets it. I have a guy that I helped set up. He bought a drink machine, a Dixie Narco 276E. I want to be really specific of what he bought. He bought it. It holds 76 cans. It's probably 30 years old. A guy I know, he had one of that machine. He set it in front of the police department, and for some reason, no one that walks in front of a police department wants to buy Mountain Dew. I don't know why. It's a thing. Whatever. So the guy that put in front of he's a big business owner. He said it was worth his time. He didn't want to do vending machines anymore. Sold it to my other friend for $150 and with all of the drinks it came with. He had 300 or 400 cans of drinks. So this other guy said, "Do you got any locations that you would let me just try this vending machine out in?" I said, "Yeah, I got an old rundown laundromat under the bridge. I've always dreamed about putting a pop machine out in front of this old abandoned laundromat under the bridge." I said, "I would just want to know how much." I told the guys, like, "I just want to know how much money. Just let me do one YouTube video. Let me do one YouTube video and document how much this machine makes in the first month or 2 weeks or whatever." And he called me up after 2 or 3 weeks. He says, "All right, Brandon, it's full of money. Let's go take a look at it." We did this whole YouTube short. I did a long, I guess I did TikTok, a short, and a long format content on it about this machine he bought with 400 cans of drinks and the machine for $150. The first collection, I think he made $228 off of it. So he paid for the entirety of the machine, which he had to put some elbow grease in, clean it out. I think it had a vending problem where a can had burst in it,
oh,
and since it's a sugary drink, it just
yeah.
screwed it up, and he had to take some soap and water, clean it out. So he paid off all of the equipment, and he had some seed money to go and fill it back up. And on my last conversation with him, he's still making decent money off it. I don't know if he's making 228 a month, or if that was like a 2 week. He's still doing it every 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or whatever. But he started for $150.
Mm,
Um, but he's a guy I know, and he watches my videos on YouTube. And he figured it was something he could try. So
yeah. I love that. And so you have that, and you have a whole bunch of other things, right? Yeah, she
mm,
talked about the laundromat, the car washes, the gas station. You talked
mm.
about
Oh, not yet. I've got a bid on a gas station.
okay, okay. Um, you talked about, interestingly enough, coin pushers.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah. I do not own them. They're just at the laundromat.
okay, yeah. I had seen those. I didn't even know how they worked, right? I've always seen
Yeah.
those things. I didn't even know how they work. I had to look into it, figure out like how those things work.
Yeah.
And it's just like basically a form of gambling, is it? Like,
Yeah, pretty much. I would put it kind of in the class of those claw machines, and claw machines do super well too. Where you have the claw and you have toys and stuff
oh
in it,
yeah.
and the crane comes down and picks it up and puts it over the thing. It's similar to that. You put a quarter in, and it has a ledge with other quarters on it. And then there's a till or a take at the bottom, and some of the coins that don't end up in the user bucket end up in the back of the machine. So we have that space. I get a 50/50 cut on the machine. I know guys that have 50, 100 of those machines, and we've got one laundromat that's very, very profitable. So
Um, you also were talking about in like your shorts, right? You're talking about yard sales, you know?
yes, oh my gosh, I love yard sales.
Yeah, just going over there, yard sales, and then
Yeah.
taking items that people are practically giving away, or maybe actually giving away.
Yes,
Um,
I don't, and I get so much flack over that yard sale video because I was like, I went to 50-cent yard sale, and they're like, no, none of these exist. I'm like, gosh darn it, I don't think these people understand how many times I've gone to yard sale and just asked for everything for free. I mean, I've done that a lot. I know a guy that built a company, and his deal was he would hand people a card, and you want a $100,000 a year business, this one's free on Brandon. You make a business card, and you say, I'll take all your crap after the yard sale's over, and you just say, I will come by with a truck or something and I'll pick up everything that you have. And you only give that card to people that have good stuff.
mm,
And what you do is you start trolling rich communities. You figure out where people have money and they've got lots of nice stuff to get rid of. And there's always, and it's where my wife and I always drive to up in Columbus. and we go to these neighborhoods that they have good stuff that they want to give away, and then you just hand them a card and say, I'll take everything off your hands that you wish to dispose of for free. So then you go with a pickup truck or a car, whatever, you just pack all the stuff in, you take it home, and then you look and see what it's worth on eBay. And then you sell it either on eBay, Facebook Marketplace, or you wherever that specific product works. And it's just mind blowing how many people have valuable stuff that they are willing to sell for nothing or give away because to them it's trash. And it's real from me, from my perspective, it's really not much different than my brother going and getting broken washers and dryers and fixing them up because they have a $3 belt broken.
Someone in my chat says, "How do you purchase the vending machine and stuff to put in it if you're poor?"
Um, well, the big thing is like for the vending machine, if you want to do a vending machine, I would say you're going to need a couple $100, like $500-600. So if you don't have $500 or $600, what I would do is I would go much lower than that and do honor boxes, and you can make an honor box for probably $5 or $10, which I would hope would be a little more approachable for you. Oh, and to stock it probably $20-25 total. But I realize there's people out there that don't have $25 to their name. So if that is you, then I would start looking at yard sales. I would look at finding something that people are getting rid of or throwing away, giving away, and find a way to do a value improve on it. I love, and granted, this won't work in New York City and it won't work in LA. But if you're in a city that is slightly less dense than those cities, you control around, especially in the fall, for people getting, or both fall and spring, anything with a motor in it, like weed eaters, lawnmowers, uh, anything that has a motor in it, because most people don't know how to service those. Watch a couple YouTube videos, and it's amazing with 20 minutes and a YouTube video, almost every small engine product can be fixed, and then you just remarket them and sell them for 50, 100, $200. So that's those small engine repair, yard sale item flipping, yard sale items that you can find for free. Those are the things that I would look at doing because you can effectively do them for free.
Um, so yeah, if you don't have capital, it's I mean it's a process. But you can.
And
Okay.
and I've said plenty of times that there's nothing wrong with getting a 9 to 5 job.
Yeah.
A lot of guys I run into it, and it's unfortunately very disappointing to me. They say, "Oh, you have to start a business. You have to do a business in order to be well, like do really well. And if you have a regular job, it's terrible." It's like, look, I was working at the Gap warehouse. It's like an Amazon warehouse for 3 years. There was nothing wrong with it. I realized after a while I couldn't family off it. There was nothing wrong with the work. So I don't want people to feel. I've run into a lot of people on social media that feel embarrassed or bad because they have a 9 to 5 job. And from my perspective, there's nothing wrong with that. But there are also service businesses that you can start for little to no money. I'm a huge fan of gutter cleaning. I'm a huge fan of anything involving trash and cleaning places up. Taking trash out of properties, rentals, foreclosures, um, anything that's a labor job that you can acquire or do with no capital. I like mowing yards. My recommendation, because I've seen a lot of people do this that I personally know, you mow yards for people and you just start going to neighborhoods, find a neighborhood that has older people in it, ask them if you can mow their yard their whole summer if they give you a mower. So there are ways to acquire the equipment for free if you can learn to negotiate with people.
Our friend Doobie said he used to go on Craigslist where people were posting free stuff that they were
Yeah.
selling, and he would grab it and sell that himself. And then
Mhm.
if it was trash, he'd offer to pick it up and take it to the dump for money.
Yep. Yeah,
Uh,
it's wonderful.
you and that reminds me of another thing that you talked about. It was the dry cleaning service. You
Mhm.
talked about how you could go to a laundromat,
Oh
offer
yeah.
the happy hour thing.
Yeah,
Could you
happy
explain that?
hour pricing.
Mhm.
Yeah. What you do is you find a laundromat that does not offer drop-off service, and you ask to run drop-off service for them. Just essentially operating as a independent contractor, getting access to their equipment for a lower cost. I've run into a lot of laundromats, and I've offered this to quite a few people. You want to start a business in my laundromat, and you want to use my washers and dryers during non-peak hours for half price? Go for it. do awesome. And around here, people are paying, generally speaking, between $1, $1.25 per pound of laundry. You drop off 10 pounds, or you get 10 pounds, it'll be $10 to 10, 12.50 in one laundry thing, one laundry unit. Um, that's going to cost you, if you get a wash and dry for half price, it'll cost you $3 and 45 minutes of time. And then you could just try and work and scale that business up.
Yeah. See, again, another thing that is doable for many individuals, right? And when I say doable, obviously it depends on everyone's situation, right? Like, let's say you've got kids to manage. Well, this is a little less doable, you know. There's
Yeah.
like always everyone's got a situation. But I like the that you are providing like just different options, right? Like what can fit into your schedule, right?
Yeah.
And
And
um,
everybody has different personalities and passions. And
yeah,
to me, I think that if you figure out what suits your personality, it's a process. And unfortunately, you've got to try and fail. And I've tried and failed at a lot of different things to find what works. And now that I found it's worked, I'm not successful in everything I do, but my success rate per thing I attempt gets better and better. And unfortunately, it's just a rapid churn and learn.
hmm. Um, so yeah, I think that's like the moral of the story, right? Is that parents like mine will tell you it's got to be a 9 to 5, right?
Mhm.
And there's some wisdom there because it's stable, you know.
Yes. And
Um, um,
stable's not a bad thing.
yeah, I hear that. As a Twitch streamer, I can tell you stable's not a bad thing. So, and but beyond that, for so many people, like, well, that'll only get you so far, right? Like,
Mhm.
what's the next step? And I think that's what you're trying to offer people, right? And there's so much more, right, than what you've put out on your channel, right? There's so many
Yeah.
other ways to
Yeah.
do this, right? But you got to one be willing to put in the hard work, right? Like again, these aren't get rich quick schemes.
Yeah.
Um, these are like I'm going to make an investment. I'm going to run a few vending machines
Mhm.
across the city. I'm going to go around. I'm going to check them. I'm going to stock them. Right. I'm going to put the time and the care into this. I got to do the negotiation right with these individuals. Like you said, some people are afraid to ask for things. Right.
Mhm.
So
Yes.
like go to a business right and you go to business. Have a negotiation. Be prepared to be rejected for whatever
Yes.
reason, right?
Yep. It's going to happen.
And then
For better or
go
for
to a
better.
next one. Yeah, right. This all takes time, it takes energy,
Mhm.
but if you can put that investment in, right, then there's
Yep.
uh, a better life waiting for you, right? And I'm not talking about a millionaire life, not necessarily, right? But you can drastically raise your living conditions through these means. So it's like it's not
Yeah.
impossible. I feel like the like what you're offering to a lot of these people with these and businesses that take that have a very low um what's that the barrier to entry, excuse me,
Mhm.
yes, the
Yep.
what you're offering to people with these business ideas with a very low barrier to entry, right, is hope, right, a little bit of
Yeah.
hope, because
Yeah.
there's a lot of despair when like how do I like get more money, right,
Yes.
like, there's no two ways
Yeah.
about it in a society you need it to live, right, and if you have only been in a working class family, right, if you've
Mhm.
only see them do it one way like you were talking about, right, growing up, like
Yeah.
you only saw that one way, and your imagination was very stunted, right, as to like
Yeah.
how far you could grow, right,
Oh, yeah.
well then you're not going to be thinking about this like your grandparents. CDs. I know
Yeah.
CDs, right? I'll tell my kids CDs, and they'll do
Yeah.
CDs, and then they'll be losing money, right? Because the game has changed.
Yeah.
So like I like the idea of offering people hope that yes, there are different ways. Some not all of them are going to be right for you, but there might be something out there. If you're willing to put the time and effort, you can start growing that. And then like your brother, because I thought your brother's actually pretty interesting, right? Flipping that multiple times into different
Mhm.
businesses, you know.
Yep.
I just love that messaging in general.
Yeah. And it's the big thing is it's access to information and knowledge, which if you come from a background like mine, like all these people talk about credit card churning, like that's a thing in the social media world. When I grew up, so credit card churning was going. I knew quite a few people that did this. They would go to a bank, get a credit card, they would max it out, and then they would just declare bankruptcy. And like, that's not good, but that's what people I know would do because they were just very poor, very nice people that I still know a lot of them. I love them with my whole heart. They're great people, but when it comes to financial knowledge, none of them have had access to that. None of them have had it. So now, as a social media guy, I'm like, okay, how do I get people interested in it, and how do I put them through this cycle? Because to me, online, all this information's there, but you've got to kind of glitz it up in order to get people interested in it. People aren't really by nature interested in cleaning out a dirty refrigerator, but they might be more inclined to do it if they knew they'd make $100 off of it in a 2 hour cleanup. Okay, so that's going to get certain people. Well, what about people that don't have access to a pickup truck, don't have access to those things? Okay, well, maybe you can find a neighborhood that people have yards and you could go and you could try to mow their yards and convince them to give you a mower for free. Okay, so that's an option that might work for some other people, but what about people that don't live in a neighborhood where anybody has a yard? Well, maybe you could get into gutter cleaning. All you need is a ladder for that. Okay, well, what if you're in an area where the average roof line's too high? You can't do that. And eventually, what I'd like to do is figure out a scenario, or at least like a dozen different businesses that somebody could try
Mhm.
if you have next to no capital, next to no ability, and then as time goes on, you could get into the bigger things like doing real estate wholesaling, real estate rentals, those kinds of things. And then you can get into the bigger investments. And if you don't want to get into those investments, you could do something else. You could just put it in stocks, or you want to do vending machines for the rest of your life, more power to you. I know a guy on YouTube, and he would essentially rather do vending machines than any other kind of investment. And I think he could make more money doing other things. But that's his passion. That's what he wants to do. And to me, there's a right way to do things to an extent, and there's a process to do things to an extent. But different personalities, people live in different locations, you have different histories. There's just different things that appeal to you as a person. And it's hard for me as 36-year-old guy growing up in Southern Ohio with a trucker dad. I can only do so much, but I'm like, man, if I could figure out how to go out and reach those people and say, hey, here's Brandon's education plan. We're gonna start you off. It's gonna cost you for free. It's going to be totally free, and then we're going to get you this thing on teaching you how to flip stuff at yard sales, do these different kinds of businesses, and then kind of just go through the process of, here's where if I had to do it again, here's where I would start, and here's where I am, approaching large institutional investors to go to the next step for my business. So.
Yeah, I love it. And there's opportunities even for people with disabilities. I like the thing that
Yeah.
uh Dibby was talking about in chat, just like going to a website, grabbing something, getting that sent to you, and then sending that out. All right, even people with disabilities could
Yeah.
do something like
and
that.
that's
Mhm.
and that's a whole nother video series that I want to work on. I've got a contact who's a quadriplegic, and he runs just an amazing company. And
Oh,
he actually was on one of President Obama's committees,
yeah,
exploratory
they
committees
got they
on
always
how to.
they've got a bunch of those committees. Yeah.
Yeah, but there was a big one, and it was absolutely amazing with how do we help people with lifetime disabilities get into a business or find a way to feel more productive. And
Mhm.
at some point, I'm going to fly down to Florida and do a series with this guy of like, if you being a quadriplegic at this point in life with a truly amazing story, some guy that almost no one's ever heard of, very successful in all of his businesses, if you had to do this all over again from the point that you guys I had said something in a live stream at some point about being evicted at 18. He's like, I was evicted at 16, and this is how I turned it around. It was just mind-blowing story. And at some point, I'm hoping to go in and build those assets for people to say, okay, this is the way that some of these people, that these contacts that I have been able to do it with severe disabilities. Because I think that those opportunities are out there, but it's just kind of an educational knowledge thing. You've got to learn what things are possibilities in work. And unfortunately, there's so much in the world of scams out there, and so much in the world of things that just unnerve me, and they get. I mean, I get physically angry sometimes when I get DMs from people and say, "Hey, you want to flip some money on Cash App?" I'm like, this is a scam. I know exactly what you're doing. You're getting access to people's social security number and you're getting their driver's license. If they even have a driver's license, they're using that information to sell scam finance products and steal money from people that have no clue what they're doing. And my newspaper actually showed up at somebody's house to investigate one of those Cash
Nice.
App flipping deals. Yeah, I did a couple of TikToks about it, and then they got taken down oddly. Kind
That's
of odd. Yeah, I had a million views on one where I was like, I have found the house of somebody involved in this scam. And it was a really great story, I thought, because we went to this lady's house. She had participated in a Cash App scam, and then all of her information was used to scam more people. And it was just this incredible process of this, just like a spider web going out further and further and further. And unfortunately, those things are out there. And when you kind of fall prey to a scam like that, you're like, oh, all of this stuff is a scam. It's impossible to, ever get out of endemic poverty. And for me, it's like, I still know a lot of people that feel that way. But then I've kind of presented to at least some people a plan of, some steps that you can do, getting rid of some of these consumer debt traps. Some of this spending that exists out there that's very, very disadvantageous towards people. Hey, can you stop spending money doing this and instead maybe start a business, invest it, do something productive? And well, they want to do what they want to do. Who am I? I'm not anybody to give finance advice. And they're still in my life. I still love them to death. I still care about them. I still think they're good people, but they just, when it comes to finance advice and money and any of that stuff, they just don't have an interest in it.
Okay.
So,
So uh we'll talk about something that is a bit more controversial,
sure.
of the things that you've pushed, right? So you pushed all
Okay.
those other things, I think, which are very grounded and very possible, right? Which that's what I love the most, right? For so many people, right? There's something out there for you, to helping, like the dry cleaning service is great. Like I just did my laundry. I fucking hate doing my laundry. Can't stand it. I can't stand it. So if someone else, I'd be one of those people who would pay, right, just a few dollars per pound, to get that done. I was just someone else have it done for me, fold it, deliver it. Oh my god! So even you can even put it in my fucking dresser. I'd pay that too. So I'd be one of those people, right? So there's definitely opportunities out there. However, something that's a little less grounded would be cryptocurrencies. Uh,
Okay.
and you've talked about that within your videos.
A little bit.
Certain members of my audience, someone will love it, others will hate it. Uh,
Okay.
Before we say anything, I just want to get your general idea.
Okay. I like cryptos in a general idea. I like the idea that there's efforts and people out there that are trying to limit the effects of inflation on people. I know I'm friends with a guy that he is currently working with the government in Kenya, and they are trying to develop more stable currency in Africa versus a lot of the regional currencies in the East African region. So he's working with the Kenyan government on trying to build stable coins, cryptocurrencies that have a very stable value. Because I don't know, a lot of people don't understand how banking works in Africa, but it's a nightmare. There's people that go to a bank to get a loan for their small business and they pay 200 or 300% interest.
Oh,
And there's people in these Kenyan communities. I know more about Kenya and Ethiopia banking processes than I do most other countries. So if I say something that's wrong here, I apologize already. But this is where I know a little bit about, and especially my friend over there working with cryptos. So the Kenyan government identifies these banks as being a huge problem, that they're charging usury interest, 200, 300%. They do it because their risk profile is obscene. And from an economic standpoint, business owner standpoint, I get why they charge 200% interest. I don't. I wouldn't do it if it was up to me. I just wouldn't do it. I'd do something else. So they're trying to build stable cryptos in Africa, and there's other groups that are doing that in South America. Uruguay is a huge example of that. They're trying to use cryptos to bring modern banking to people in areas and regions of the world that have nothing. Or they've got these scam banks that are charging extreme interest rates. So cryptos, from that perspective, I think are wonderful. They're life changing. They're amazing. I like Bitcoin. I like Ethereum. I like Litecoin. I like certain kinds of coins that are backed by large groups of users. They're good. I like them in a general sense. But I get very scared because so many of these cryptos, and I have been in crypto, believe it or not, since 2011. I got my first Bitcoin from a Bitcoin faucet when you could click a button and it would give you half of one Bitcoin. And you just would click on it and it would give you half Bitcoin and you just had to copy and paste your wallet ID to them. And in 2012, I lost all of my crypto due to a keylogging scam. And I gave up on it for a while because I was like, who wants a currency or a type of money that's so easily accessible, so easily hacked? Like I've had a PayPal account since 2006-ish, I guess, and it's been accessed twice by somebody that wasn't me, and I got my money back both times. So it's like, yeah, PayPal's a little more secure than crypto. But I look at these wonderful programs that people are working regarding crypto on, and I look at them, I'm like, man, that's very nice. It's futuristic, but as it stands right now, I would only put a small fraction of the money that I have. I'd only expose a small fraction to crypto. The problem is when I talk to people, they've all got FOMO, fear of missing out, and they look at Bitcoin, the fact that it was 1/100th of a cent back in 2011, and now I think it was about 40,000 this morning. And they realize if I would have put $10 in Bitcoin, I could have been a millionaire, whatever that works out to. And they're now putting all of the money they have in a bunch of different cryptos
Mm-hmm.
that are these moonshots.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked them, I'm like, wouldn't it make more sense to put $10 in it and just leave it be? Because if that one goes to the moon like you expect it to go, you expect it to go to the moon just like Bitcoin, because it's the replacement for Bitcoin. It's going to go up straight up the chart. Wouldn't it make sense to just put $10 in it as opposed to exposing all of the money that you have?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what worries me. Because
Mm-hmm.
I talk to people that are getting in these different cryptos that have, from my perspective, virtually no value beyond the fact that people feel it's worth something, which most currencies kind of that way. You put faith in somebody else that's going to be worth that their currency or the money they have is worth something. So I get that, but the problem is they're doing that and they're not applying the same mindset to this thing is the next Bitcoin. I should probably just put $10 because the problem is the people that are putting all their money in, they would have never bought Bitcoin in 2011. They would have never bought Ethereum in 2015. They would have never bought it anyway because it was on the forefront. It was very, very aggressive. No one knew about it. But if you would have exposed just a little bit of money, you would have been still a millionaire. So for me, I would rather put most of my money in something that's stable, like VOO, VTI, triple Q. Is it triple Q or quadruple Q? They're very large index ETFs. And then I would take a little bit of money, and then I'd find something investment wise to play with it. If you want to take $100 or whatever, and it's not your wealth, and throw it into an NFT, sure. Would I ever suggest to any human being take their life savings of whatever it is and throw it in an NFT? Absolutely, positively not. Would I rather you throw it in like a large REIT that has a track record for the last 60 years? Yeah, it's only going to return 10% a year, but man, you're going to feel better after 10 years and it's gone up in value as opposed to buying a 8-bit cat that was somebody's NFT and the likelihood because you're not a very well-educated NFT investor, it's going to be worth $5 2 years from now. That stuff worries me because I've tracked so many cryptos over me being initially buying into Bitcoin. I've looked at the lifetime values of so many different coins out there, and their development teams were crap, their white papers were crap, but they came off kind of nice to um, un, investors that did very understand it very well.
Mm.
So
Yeah. So, okay. So it seems you've got a bit more of a nuanced take on crypto. When
no,
people hear about
sorry.
when people hear about crypto, I think they have very strong reactions, right? For or against.
Yeah.
But it seems like what you're saying, right? Is that uh, there are, there are safe investments and there are risk investments, and risk investments can have a very large payout, right?
Yeah.
As a person who especially doesn't have a large amount of assets to be playing with, right? What you should be
Yeah.
doing, put your money into a safe, reliable investment,
Yes,
right?
I would.
Foc- Focus on that,
And
and then beyond that, like if you want to play around with these things, right, and if their return on the ROI is exactly what you think it will be,
mm,
well then sure, put a bit of cash in there, right?
yeah,
100, 200 maybe, or something, if you have that amount to play with, and wait for that explosion. If it doesn't, if a
yeah,
risk investment proves that it's risky, right, then you're
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
uh,
A lot of people I run into, they play the lottery and they put a lot of money hoping for a payoff, and I would much rather than put a little bit of money in crypto. But from the average person, if you would put money into, say, something like VOO or VTI, which are very easy index wide ETFs, based on the track record of investments like that over the next 5 or 10 years, you're going to do very well. And I would rather the average person that isn't very well educated with stocks and investments buy in something that's going to do okay, not moonshot, but do okay. And then 5 years from now, they've got $50,000 or 10,000 or 5,000 or whatever, some money there, and they've seen that they've actually got a nest egg that's growing in value a little every month. To me, that would be such a powerful mental tool that then maybe you can start working on your skill set. You can get a better job. Maybe you can start getting a little more, you can start looking at a little bit of more risky or more aggressive investments. Maybe you can take a step towards real estate or starting a business or doing something that's the next step beyond just putting money in that VTI or that stable investment. But I did the math on it not too long ago. But if you worked at just a normal 9 to 5 job and you did stable investing for 30 years, you still end up pretty wealthy. And it's like, I could live on that kind of money. When I was that kid years ago, I always had a hope of, maybe someday I'll have a job that makes $50,000 a year. That would be the greatest thing ever. And after you factor inflation, and that's like 75 to $80,000 a year. I still look at that amount and I'm like, I'd be pretty happy with it. I could do okay in Ohio with it. So,
um so I think that makes a lot of sense. The things that you're pushing there, so I like that a lot. I want to go back to something you said
sure.
previously, right? You said you wanted everyone in my audience to be a millionaire, right?
Yes,
And I would like them all to be millionaires, especially if they
I would like
donate.
them to.
And donating millionaires would be great. But yeah, but I guess my issue there is, and it was also my issue with the billionaire comment, is that not everyone can be that, right? Like, the system doesn't seem to allow for everyone to become a millionaire, right? It allows for people to dream that they will become a millionaire, right? And it affects their voting patterns, maybe, right? They think, well, maybe one day I might be a billionaire, so yes, let's do tax cuts for the rich or something, you know. But like, most aren't going to achieve that. I like the idea of what you were talking about before, and that this like a looking for modest ways to increase your wealth, right? Like not a moonshot, right? But instead, like put yourself like continuously raise the living standards of you and your family, right? And you are often through your channel and through other places on YouTube, right? Opportunities to do that, right? If you put some time and effort. But necessarily the idea that you will be a millionaire, like let's focus on the vending machines thing just for a second, right? If everyone did vending machines, then vending machines would be worthless, right? At some point, there's only so many locations, right? There's only so
Yeah,
many people looking for so many snacks, and not everyone can use that to become a millionaire, right? And you can
sure.
scale this for the economy at large, but it's just not possible for us all to be wealthy, correct?
I don't agree with that.
You don't agree with that?
But unfortunately, that's kind of a economics thing where we may never agree on. And it's if I'm going to word this wrong, it's the ever expanding pie when it comes to economics that the global economic pie is this big and it grows. And then there's a competing economic theory that the global pie is this big, and there's only so many slices for everybody to have. I agree with the position that if everybody had a vending machine, then vending machines would be worthless because eventually you reach a supply and demand threshold. Not everybody can have a vending machine because then they become worthless. But from based on the research I've done and the statistics that I look into, I kind of am convinced that if everybody would make wise investments in broad range stocks and things like that over the next 30 years or so, you would have a nest egg over $1 million. And I'm kind of inclined when I look at countries that have national pension funds and they put every single person paying into the national pension fund into their stock market. Sweden and Chile both do that. And you track what their numbers are. And granted, the median income in Chile isn't nearly what is in the United States, but for a living standard, if you achieve a median income in that country, it's almost like becoming a millionaire. So for me, if people could kind of limit their um, spending on consumer goods, things that really aren't super useful, then you would be able to achieve those things should you so desire. But that's a kind of a personal choice that I don't think everybody's going to make.
If
I would like
everyone
everybody.
if everyone had $1 million, what happens to $1 million? What does that mean for the economy? $1 million.
Well, it depends on what does $1 million buy today.
Oh,
And I
today.
mean, today,
Yeah.
it depends on what it buys. In the state of Ohio, $1 million goes a lot farther than would for somebody in, say, Los Angeles or New York City. I can still buy a 3 bedroom, 1 bathroom house here for about $125,000. And I know that exact same house in Los Angeles would cost probably 1.2 to 1.3 million.
Come on.
So
Come on. Come
my
on.
thing is, if I had $1 million,
Brandon.
I would look at a
Brandon.
cheaper place.
Come on. Like, if everyone has $1 million, right? And you, sir, are a person selling a house and you know everyone has $1 million, how much are you selling that house for? Are you selling it
It,
for $125,000?
it would depend, but if everybody has a median income in California, why don't they save up and then buy a house in a different state and then just retire there? Why would anybody ever retire in California? Your money would go farther in every other state, but people make a conscientious choice to spend that money in other places.
Come on. You're dodging the question, Brandon. You're dodging the question. Come on. If everyone nationwide, right, like follows your plan, right, and starts building wealth and gets $1 million, like what's the price of a house then? In a world where everyone has $1 million,
It depends on it is, whatever it is. Now,
it's a lot higher.
if everybody has $1 million and the average days on market isn't what I want it to be, I would look at undercutting it, and then it becomes a supply and demand issue. I promise you, I'm not trying to give you a bunch of weasel words when it comes to the supply of money, but I am kind of
I mean,
that way.
it's just my point is that like not everyone can be rich, and I don't want to put that idea in people's minds, right? I'd rather live in a world where we had a proper safety net, right, to catch people when they were falling, right? I'd rather live in a world that valued you and your family, and so that you didn't necessarily get evicted, right? Or at the very least, that there was affordable housing for you that you guys could have accessed, right? I'd rather live in a world where everyone is paid a living wage, right? Living wage that they can all accomplish, right? Like just the basic American dream of like being able to work a one job, one 9 to 5, and pay for life's necessities, right? I'd
Sure.
rather do that, right? I'd rather like the income, or at least the pay of workers match their productivity, which has been going up for decades, but not their pay, right? I'd rather live in a world that values workers in general, right? Like that's
Mhm.
what I'd want to start with,
Sure.
right? We're not in that world now, right? Because I don't feel so. Like we're not in that world, and so since we're running this rat race, I'd like to hear from you about all the tactics, right, to get ahead in that rat race. But I understand it's a rat race, and there's going to be losers. And so I hate putting in an idea in people's minds
Yeah.
that everyone's going to be a millionaire. Do you understand
I,
my question?
yeah, I get what you're saying. I get where your heart is. I mean, it's not a sellout
Mm.
when I say I, I, I see where your heart is, because I think you're a good guy, and I want everybody to live a good life. And I would love for you to be the guy that provides affordable housing in wherever you are. I don't want you to be a millionaire. These are all these guys on the comments. They could be a millionaire, but I want you to be a multi millionaire. And I want you to get in a position where you can be the guy that provides all the housing and as affordable as you want to make it. And you pay your employees a living wage, and you treat them, every single person in your company, like a king. And you are the solution to everything, all that you become the solution to all the problems that you see in the world. I wish that doubly for you, but I also wish it for all the people in the comments. The problem is, whether you consider this a problem or not, I think that perspective starts to shift when you run a business and you start to become that guy at the top. And, when we go back, one of the landlords that evicted my family, it's not one of the landlords, the specific landlord that evicted my family when I was 6, he is one of the investors currently in my company. The son of the landlord that evicted my family when I was 18, his son works for me at my car wash. He is the trash man.
What a
And
turnaround. Oh,
yeah.
shit. Go ahead.
So I think that from my perspective, in a general sense, perspectives change. As you make money, you start a company, you employ people, you provide housing for people. And I think the only way that I can address a lot of these questions, and these are questions and topics that are way over my pay grade. I've never been to college. I'm not an I can't even say the word. Holy crap, my Southern Ohio
Economics
hillbilly
professor.
speech. I am not a economics major in any way, shape, or form. But I would like everybody to try and have the ability at some point in their life to be in the driver's seat, so that maybe they can be the person that provides some of the answers to the problems in life that they see are major key components.
So
Um,
I don't disagree with the statement that you were making, right? And previously, and I don't think you need to be an economics major or professor or anything like that to wrap your head around. You don't have to go to college for this, right? You can be a working class Joe to understand that the needs of the workers, right, of the needs and wants and desires of the workers differ from that of bosses, right? You're saying your perspective starts to shift when you're the owner. That is exactly true, right? Then you have different class loyalties, right? And class and just demands. Like as a owner, right? You want to get the most out of your workers for the lowest price, right? It only makes sense, right?
for me, it doesn't.
I
I want to pay. I want to have workers that are happy, because I don't want anybody come work for me that's miserable. Because why would I want to give?
what you're doing. So what you're doing there, and that's which is better, and I'm glad. Great. What you're doing there though is balancing, right? And that like you're adjusting the amount of productivity you can get out of a person, with the economic incentive, right? So you're realizing, right? Because you're not like because what you're trying to tell me here is that you're not a sleazy capitalist, right? What you're realizing is that yes, you could probably pay that same worker a lower amount, but their productivity might be decreased because they're fucking miserable, right? Or because you're paying them so little, right, that they have so much stress, like doing surviving day to day, that when they finally come back to work the next day here, right, then they aren't going to give their 110%. They're not going to care about the business, right? So if you treat them a bit more fairly, well, then you can actually get more productivity out of them, right? One way or the other. You might not be thinking in terms of productivity, but it works out the same way, correct?
Yeah, if you're headed where I think you're at, then yes.
Okay, yeah. So that's great. Like, but that's good. But in the end, right? An owner has different desires, right? Wants and desires than a worker. You don't have to be a college grad to understand that.
Yes.
Yeah, right. In fact, Marx understood that. But, but the point is that like this isn't a complicated issue. Right? This is something that everyone can wrap their hands on. It's important that they do. It's important that they do, right? Because your boss is not necessarily on your side, right? They aren't backing you. They have different requirements. As a person who employs people, right? Like you run into these things where you can't be friends with everyone, right? Like a boss can't be friends with all their workers, right? Because there's certain needs that the business requires, and if there's workers who can't fill that need for whatever reason, right? Then at some point you gotta let them go, right? That's the worker doesn't want that, but the boss needs that. The business needs that, right?
The business needs it, and the other workers need it too.
Yeah. Yeah, but and the other workers may need it too. But I'm talking about that individual worker, right?
Yeah,
They're
it sucks for them, but
yeah.
if you don't make those hard choices, then everybody loses.
Absolutely,
The
I
other
agree with you,
employees.
right? And none of that is to like place any sort of like moral blame, right? To say that one side is morally like um degenerate or something. I'm not my
Okay.
words are my words aren't working for me right now. But like one side, no one's bad, right? In this situation that we're describing here. But their needs are just different. The needs are different,
Okay.
right? Um, but so I want to just acknowledge that, right? I want to acknowledge that, like, that we all there's only so far that the system allows all of us to advance, right? At some point in time, someone's going to break ahead within that system, right? And they'll be mega rich, right? None of us we can't all be billionaires, right? So that's why, like, I'm less concerned about learning from from the feet of a
Okay.
billionaire, right?
Sure.
Some of us can, some of us will, right? There may be someone in this audience. If you do, remember me, come back and gift a lot of subs. That'd be great. But most of us won't, right? That's a lottery right there. Becoming a billionaire, that's a lottery, right? Becoming a millionaire is a lottery that better odds, right? But a bit of a lottery. Increasing your living standards, I think, is a different goal, like a goal that people can reach, and that's why I kind of want to direct their efforts to, right, rather than necessarily say that look at Elon Musk. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, but I think that you would find out really quickly. And I think that your goal here is wonderful. And I am so thankful for you having me on here so that we can talk about these things. And hopefully some person, many people, will apply these things and maybe they can get out of their situation that they're in. But I would make a statement that if you go with one economic side of things and you do the drill down, I worry because I have a lot of friends that won't do this because they feel like the rat race is inescapable, and even increasing the quality standards is going to decrease the living standards for somebody else.
Mm.
And I run into that a lot, unfortunately.
Well, thank you, someone who remembered me for
Oh,
gifting 10
yay! A
subs.
lot of congratulations. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Good
There's
for you.
a lot of is waiting for me. But okay, I think I've taken a lot of your time already. Brandon / Investment Joy, this has been amazing. I actually really have enjoyed this, getting your perspective on these things, right? For a person who's making it, again, and I love again that you started from the bottom, right? And it wasn't a bunch of tricks, right? That put you where you were. Like it was a lot
So,
of hard work and um, uh, gaining knowledge in the requisite areas. I do appreciate you and the time that
thank you
you've.
for having me on.
Yeah, I would love to talk to you again, maybe sometime in the
Sure,
future.
sounds good.
Okay, where can everyone find you? We'll start there. Like,
All my social medias at Investment Joy. I'm on YouTube. I'm here on Twitch, Instagram, TikTok. I've also got a Discord on Investment Joy. If you go to investmentjoy.com/Discord, it'll just give you a free invite, and you can go on my Discord as well. So,
okay. And to your audience, hi, my name is PrimeCayes, PrimeCayes. You can find me here on Twitch. You can find me on YouTube. And I'd love to have you. We do like political debates all the times. We do interviews. We do open panels where honest members like you, yes, you sitting at home, may participate. Right. In fact, we're going to do that right after this. And we talk about different issues. Yeah, we have interesting people on, interesting people like Brandon here, who was so kind as to spend some time with us. So if that interests you, come on by the Twitch channel. Come on by the YouTube. Right, subscribe there. Come here and follow. Hit that follow button. We got a lot of content here. We do it 6 nights a week. Right, it's plenty for you to enjoy. So thank you so much, Brandon, once again. I hope you have a fantastic night.
I hope you have one too, and all of your chatters, whether we agree or disagree on economics. I wish every single one of you a lot of success and happiness in life.
Absolutely. Have a good one, buddy.
You too. Thanks.